Oh, hey guys, just to give me a minute, alright? There we go. What do you guys think? Something more generic for the channel. So, Bravely Second has been out for about a month now for us Westerners. I pre-ordered the collector's edition and have been playing it sparingly, but often over the last month. As I played the first one and love that game very much, as it is my favorite game of all time, I decided to give my first impressions on the earlier parts of Bravely Second. I'll be talking about everything in the game, and we'll only discuss the plot of the prologue. If you get easily butthurt over small spoilers like that, well, you might want to click off. If you would rather know, however, and don't mind knowing about the very first part of the game, along with my own opinion of it, then keep on listening, and we'll begin. Now from here, I won't be switching images or showing diagrams or pictures or anything like my usual videos. I'll just be talking. So you can switch to another tab or whatever you want while I talk about the game. First, let's just get this out of the way and talk briefly on plot. I won't spoil too much, but I'll give the premise of the prologue, the very first chapter of the game, and my opinion on up to where I'm at right now. I think I'm near the end of chapter 2. So, the first thing that happens is a little slideshow of drawings retelling the events of Bravely Default, and then is immediately switched over to a battle scene between a few characters. The new Pope Agnes, the Templar, and Alternus, with a new character, Eugeniolja, face off against a mysterious man calling himself the Kaiser Oblivion, and his fairy friend Anne. The series has completely destroyed my trust in fairies. Anyway, the Kaiser kicks the crap out of the party and kidnaps Agnes. After Yu wakes up from the battle, he is determined to go after her and gathers his friends Nikolai and Jan, whom make up the three Cavaliers, basically the three Musketeers, and start to travel off. But things happen, Jan turns over to the Empire with the Kaiser and rejects Yu and the Crystal Guard, and Nikolai dies. But this still doesn't stop Yu from going on alone. On his travels, he meets Ideali, and they travel to Eternia, where they learn that they need to awaken Tiz Oryar from his sleep if they wish to save Agnes. On their way to Eternian Central Command, they come across a crashed spaceship, and Yu saves a young woman inside named Magnolia Arch, and she claims that she comes from the moon. The three of them press on and eventually waken Tiz, who has been in a coma since the ending of Bravely Default. That's all I'm going to directly say about the story. So, giving the players a review of Default Story, excellent choice. It gives veteran players a bit of nostalgia, and new players a very simple review of what happened in the first game, should they have never played it. The cutscenes are much more interactive and dynamic than in Default, with the characters doing little actions and having more facial expressions, and I really enjoy watching them. The English voice actors are much better than in Default, and have a lot more expression and feeling in their voices, instead of being kinda awkward most of the time. Another fun feature is that you can go back and rewatch dialogue sessions that take place during boss fights, something that you only got to see once in Default. This was something I wanted a lot, so I'm glad it was implemented into the second game. The only issue I have with the plot, as I am up to in the game so far, is that it feels a little similar to Default's storyline, so I feel at times like I'm just playing a remake of that game instead of a new one. But of course, it is in the same world, so story can be limited in some ways. Overall, the plot is quite enticing and definitely drives the game forward strongly. I'll talk about character and voice acting just a little more before we get to the bigger topics. The character development and personalities of the people in second is much more interesting than Default and much more in depth. I'll use Adia as an example because she's in both games. In Default, if you wanted to learn about a character, you'd read up on them in Dee's journal, and you'd see that Adia is into sweets and foods, which is under her likes. This is only brought up, though, in about 2 or 3 party chat sessions and a few other cutscenes. Otherwise, everyone is constantly just duty focused and acting way too seriously all the time. Ringabel probably had the most character out of anyone in that game, since he started off as a playboy, but eventually evolved into more of a, right, duty focused. Uh, Now let's look at Adia in Bravely Second. Now, food is a big thing with her in this game, probably mentioned every third cutscene with her in it. It's a big part of her character now, and this is similar among all characters in Second. You don't have to read about a character's personality because they actually show it now in the cutscenes. The voice acting has gotten much better as well, and they really fit their characters much better than they were in Default. The characters of Default were still fun, but they have become much better in this game. Next on the list is music. Now this doesn't sound... No? Okay. like a very big topic, but a lot of people have different opinions on the soundtrack. Some people like it, a lot of people seem to hate it. I'm on the side that really likes it, and I'll explain why. I'm going to play two clips of music, one from Default and the other is from Second. First, here's the normal asterisk boss for Default. Alright, now here's the new asterisk boss theme from Second. Now, most people dislike the soundtrack to this game because it has more synthesizers and an electronic kind of sound to it, while Default had a lot more real instruments used and therefore sounds different than many different games. I can definitely see what they mean, and I do prefer the use of real instruments over synthesizers myself. However, if you paid attention, you notice the difference in tone and feeling between the two songs. Default's theme was a lot more inspiring and encouraging, kind of like, come on, we can do this, while Second's gave a sense of desperation, like, if we screw this up, we're dead. That's the difference between the two soundtracks. They reflect on the theme of the game itself. Second is a much darker themed game than Default, and the soundtrack does a great job of fitting that role. Besides, the game even includes some songs from Default anyways, so I don't see any reason to complain. That's just my opinion though. Now to finally get to the part you've probably been waiting for. How does the game look and feel? Well, for design, there's not that much to talk about. They're basically exactly the same in terms of graphics, with the beautiful hand-painted backgrounds and excellent 3D models in dungeons. I do enjoy the new sorts of dungeons, though, where a certain floor can be multi-leveled instead of just one flat maze. The only issue I have with design is that it does look like a drag and drop of Default. I understand the places you're returning to are supposed to look the same, but I think they could have just changed some of the places up a bit, and the combat menu is almost exactly identical to Default's. It's still a good looking game, of course. I just would have preferred that with its second game coming out, they could have edited it just a little bit more. Now for gameplay. Well, it plays exactly the same as Default, which I'm happy about. However, a few things have changed which are both good and bad. One really nice feature is the recommended level text that appears in any dungeon you enter, so you can have an idea of what level you want to be when you want to get to the end of the dungeon. The biggest thing to notice is that the bonuses for killing a random encounter have been changed. There's no more unscathed or sweeper bonuses, but the one-turn victor is still there in a sense. Now, if you kill a group of enemies in one turn, you'll be asked if you'd like to fight another wave with your current BP and health for a chance to up all rewards, PEG, XP, and job points by 1.5 times. If you one turn kill the next group, it'll go up to 1.8 and continue by 0.2 for each wave you keep one turn killing. This is good and bad. It's good because you can get a lot of rewards out of farming this way, but not when you first enter a new land. That's a big problem because it means you will progress very slowly when you start off. And rewards feel like they have been reduced noticeably, especially job points. That's one thing I'm particularly sour about for this game. Jobs now feel incredibly hard to level up, so it takes a while for players to get any new abilities. Same deal with buying new gear because PEG is hard to get when just starting, and leveling up is average. Now I know I just sound like I'm complaining that the game is too tough, but this is in comparison to Default. When I played through that game, the average area would give you rewards that give you easy levels until you hit the higher end of the average for that area. Here's what I mean. If I entered Florum for the first time and every enemy there is between levels 15 to 20, it would be relatively easy to get to level 20, and it'd be relatively easy to get jobs at that kind of level, and it'd be relatively easy to get pig around that kind of area. But if I kept farming it to get higher than level 20, it would be more tricky. Also, job abilities would be easy to earn for about the first 5 or 6, and then would require a little more work for each one. Money would also be given at a fair rate, where you could buy the gear of that area after a little bit more farming. The progression of default felt more natural than it does in second. I find myself farming a lot harder in the early levels than I was in default, and it takes a lot longer to get to the average spot the game expects the player to be at in that area. Then, when you can finally start doing the one-turn victor farming, you're already overpowered enough for that area, so it's just overkill and getting 100% on every job. So it's basically wanting you to get leveled up before you move on to the next area, which I don't really like myself. I will finish combat with noting two other nice features though. Remember how if you want to cast 4 fire spells in default, you would have to go and click Brave, 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 and then select each separate fire spell over and over? Well, now you can go straight to the fire spell, click Brave on that spell, and it will cast that many times on your chosen target. This makes things go by much more quickly when you're fighting. Oh, and if you examine an enemy, you will permanently learn its stats, and even though the HP now varies between the same enemy on waves, you won't have to examine it again to relearn its health, which I think is really great. The last thing I can think of to talk about is items, jobs, and other side features. As I've said before, Peak doesn't come as naturally as it did in default, so it can be tricky at times to buy things from the shops. Most of the items in second, however, are the same as those in default, with a couple of new ones added in. 2 new weapon types are now available, greatswords and firearms. Greatswords are two-handed, so now Zweihander is under the greatswords group and not the swords, like it was in default. Firearms are also just a bunch of two-handed rifles, and they work well with the new Hawkeye class, similar to the Ranger from default, which leads us into jobs. There are a few new jobs in second that are quite interesting. Probably my two favorite new jobs I've come across so far are the Fencer, which can do attacks while switching between different stat boosting stances, and the Charioteer. The Charioteer does a great job, I'm sorry, I'll just stop with the puns now, of making the attack command actually useful. You know how you used to only be able to equip weapons in your right and left hands? Well, now with the Charioteer, you can put weapons in your right hand, left hand, head, and body armor slots. Yes, you can attack with 4 weapons on a character. It's genius. There are also the old jobs from default, but these are all subplots, and each subplot has 2 jobs available. But you can only choose one to earn at the end of the subplot. So you either follow your moral compass and do the right thing, or throw it out the window and go for the good job. Either way is fine. I'd rather have them all, of course, but I'll take what I can get. I just hope they don't have any pairings where I want both jobs that are involved. There's some last features I want to talk about before I call it a wrap for this video. Now since Norende Village has been fixed, we now have the moon base Magnolias from Fort Loon. Same deal as default, send little guys to fix up the shops so you can get stuff, but there's no armor or weapons anymore. I like it, happy they threw in another version of that. There's also a mini game where the team makes Chomper plushies, which earn the player a currency called CP. CP can be used for 2 things, buying upgrades in said minigame, and it can also be transformed into Pig. How to do that, I've yet to find. You can also listen to different songs from the soundtrack as the team works, so it's a little bit relaxing. I personally like this minigame, at least a lot more than the stupid Tamagotchi part of Kingdom Hearts 3D. I greatly appreciate that Square Enix recognizes that players might be busy in the real world, so they threw something in that they can do while they are away from the DS. This is said right in the opening message when starting it up for the first time. Overall, these little features are a lot of fun, and I enjoy them quite a bit. So I've covered everything that I could think of that you might be wondering about Bravely Second. These are my opinions on the game so far, and they might change later on as I get further into the game. Overall opinion though, I really liked the game. It lived up to my expectations and exceeded a couple of them. I particularly like the soundtrack and how much better the voice acting and personalities of the characters has gotten, but I wish the progression was a little more natural and not so forced on the player, and that rewards were a little easier to get when your party isn't at par with the enemies of the area. It's definitely worth the money you spend for it, but this is just one guy's opinion. So I recommend heading to the store now, buying a copy, and trying it out for yourself. See what you think. That's all from me for now. If you want more opinion videos on this game in the future, maybe when I finish the game, an overall look, or any other kinds of videos, let me know in the comments below. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you soon.